Welcome, everybody. It's Kelvin Shaw here with another Business Growth Moments. And I'm your career and business growth consultant. And I'm excited for this episode. I have a special guest here, Professor of Diversity, Inclusion, and also Diversity and Inclusion Consultant, a good friend of mine out of Toronto, Dean Delpeache. So, Dean, welcome to the episode, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Kelvin, I'm honored to be a part of this, and I think you're doing a fantastic job with this show and looking forward to this interview.
Thank you. Well, I know I gave a brief introduction to yourself, but why don't, in your own words, why don't you let us know kind of what you do and what diversity inclusion even means in a workplace and how you've been an expert in this field?
Yeah, so I wear several hats, if I could say that from perspective. On a day-to-day, I work for a medium-sized software company called Fix Software, which is now a part of the Rockwell Automation Group. My role there is I'm responsible for talent recruitment, and I'm also responsible for diversity and have a dotted line reporting relationship into our CEO when it comes to all of our diversity metrics. And then I'm also a professor. I created the diversity inclusion curriculum for George Brown College, and
Right.
I teach that on a regular cadence. And then as well as you kind of mentioned, I'm also a diversity inclusion consultant. I have my own company called Stracity, which where we help and support companies in terms of their diversity strategy as well as education and training. So it's pretty much kind of a summary from a professional perspective of who I am.
Excellent. Now, diversity and inclusion has been, I would say, buzzwords, especially in the last year and a half, that we hear over and over, especially how we get this in a workforce. Can you define what diversity and inclusion actually means in that context, and why is it really important for the
Yeah,
workforce?
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the first thing in terms of talking about diversity, when we look at that, we're looking at how we can have greater representation in our workforce from not just what we would consider the dominant group in Western culture, but also from marginalized groups. And depending on the organization, a lot of times you could have companies that might be male dominated in nature or even female dominated in nature. We want to ensure that companies have more of an equal balance, if I could say, when it comes to representation in the workforce. So that's what we're looking at when we're talking about diversity. When we're talking about inclusion, most organizations have what we call some form of a business outcome. So whether they want to drive revenue, greater profitability, maybe greater innovation.
Right.
And research tells us that, when you have greater diversity in your organization, you have people who think from different aspects and different views. If you can manage that correctly, that's where you get inclusion. So bringing all those people together
Right.
and creating inclusion around a goal, right, to really, really drive an outcome. And so it's
Right.
bringing those people together to really drive something positive in your workforce. Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, in your experience, your consulting work as a professor as well, and also in your recruitment, placement, HR kind of work, what does the Canadian market look like when it comes to diversity and inclusion? Are Canadian companies doing well? Is there improvement? What have you seen, and what conclusions have you drawn from that?
Yeah, well, I would say number one, in the major cities across Canada, Montreal's, the Ottawas, the Torontos, Vancouver's, et cetera. Number one, these are where you have the greatest pockets of diversity. So for example, Toronto, we have about 51.5% what we call racialized groups. Before we used to call it visible minorities. Now I use the term racialized because the racialized people are the majority now, right?
Right.
But at the same time, though, when you start to move into the upper echelon of companies and look at who the leaders are within those organizations, it's still heavily dominated by the dominant group, which we call white European, so to speak. And that's more from a visible perspective and the characteristics of diversity. So what where the shift is happening, I'll tell you this, where the shift is happening now, Kelvin, especially since the last year, is people are becoming more vocal about seeing change.
Right.
And I think one thing that's come up is, if you've heard of the Black North Initiative.
Yes.
So you're seeing these companies starting to sign on, to this initiative of creating, bringing more Black people into leadership roles, etc. I think the proof will be in the pudding over the next couple of years as to what we see. So I think you see the vocal shift. Now it's really trying to see the measurement over the next couple of years.
Right. Now we have about 4 minutes left. This is powerful stuff. Dina, we're probably going to have to do a larger episode, maybe a 45 minute to an hour at some point.
No problem, man.
But I've heard this over and over in workforces, and especially over the last year. With all the things happening in the world, good, bad, ugly, people are, like you said, becoming more vocal. So let's put a scenario in 2 minutes here, where you're a company, there's a company watching this, and they've recognized that they want more diversity inclusion in their leadership per se. What steps can they do right now, today, to kickstart it, or even to even start building a framework around it and think about it? What can they do? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple quick tips. First one, be intentional.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Have the mindset to do it. Number two, sponsorship. So begin to look for employees that are high performers who might be marginalized, and as senior leaders in your company, start to sponsor them. Bring them into opportunities where they could showcase their project work and showcase it to a larger group, because a lot of times leadership is about perception. If people start to perceive that these people are leaders in the organization, when it comes time to make them leaders, they'll accept it more. And then at the same time too, I would also say training and education. Begin to train your leaders. Begin to find those who are high performers, as I said. And even those who are medium performers, begin to work on how you can bring them into a high performing group and begin to showcase that. There's so much we could talk about, but we'll do that in the 45-minute one.
and I'll also say, if you're a company out there and you have started to think about this, we'll put Dean's contacts in this video below. I would also say, number 4, get in touch with Dean today so he can maybe take a look at your organization and see what's going on. One last question, and we have about 2 minutes here, maybe even a minute and 50 seconds. If I am somebody that's a part of this diverse group, not Western or white, if I could say that, what can I do? Because I know from that perspective, minorities are all saying, well, I don't want to be given something just because of the color of my skin. It's also actually the effort. I just want to have the opportunity. What can I do as a minority? I forget what you called it. I don't know. Marginalized group.
Yeah.
What can I do to improve myself, to better stand out within an organization, to get those type of opportunities?
Yeah. Number one, continue to work hard, continue to do, not just perform in your role, but add value to the companies that you're in. I think that goes a long way of saying. Number two, I would say network with the right people, start to build the right relationships in your companies, because, one of the key things about, really, really moving vertically or even horizontally from the perspective of gaining more expertise in your job skill is, building the right relationships in the company. And I think that's really, really important. So network, build right relationships. The last thing I'm going to say on that is, which is kind of close to number one, is just become an expert in what you do. When you can show a company that you add value, you become irreplaceable. And that is just the truth. And if you could show organizations that, you'll go far. So I encourage all people who are in marginalized groups to really, really do that.
Dean, this has been outstanding. We definitely are going to come back if I can bother you for 45 minutes.
Man, so quick. but it's awesome. It's awesome.
It's awesome stuff. If you want to get in touch with Dean, definitely let us know. Also, from a recruiting standpoint, this is what we do at Recruiting in Motion, and that's what I do. Try to just network with solid people for your organization. So thank you so much, Dean. Thank you for being with us on the show, and we'll see you next time here. Thanks for joining us, and check out the different links and channels that you can find this episode.